Google Pesky's Pest Control Montgomery. No bug will survive. Call 334-595-9055.
Hey, so today we want to talk about exclusion, getting rats, mice, squirrels, raccoons, possums, anything that could be squeezing its way into your house, into your barn. I mean, any area that you don't want something in, we can seal that up and solve that problem for you.
Yeah, and that's a perfect opportunity to talk about that today because I have actually, this last week, had about 3 different rodent exclusion jobs that I'm either working on or have finished. So I got some really cool footage, some really cool photos to add before and after sort of things, so we can kind of talk about it. But before we show that, when you go and you do a rodent inspection on a house, you know, whether that's, let's kind of dive on more like mice and rats at this point, because that's all my footage is kind of going from that. But
well, it's going to protect against all of it. You know, you're not just going to have,
it will.
you know, yeah.
But let's talk about what your method is when you walk on site at a customer's property, you know, and you just start looking. What are you looking for?
Well, so when we're going around the house, we're looking for any tight spot that, well, if we're talking about rats and mice, you know, a mouse needs about the size of a dime to fit through. So anything that I can put my thumb in, basically a mouse can get into. Rats, you're looking about the size of a quarter. So any cracks, crevices, see a lot of mortar joints missing. Did one the other day, actually, an inspection where had a lot of mortar issues. The house was kind of separating and pulling away from the brick, and we had a nice opening in multiple places around the house. And
just most people, you know, not everyone is inclined to know exactly, you know, how a house is built, mentally picturing what's behind that. So, you know, when you have a house with a brick veneer, and you mentally think to yourself, what's behind that? And if you've never paid attention to how a house is built, then you may not know that there's, you know, some sort of moisture barrier followed by plywood, followed by wood studs and insulation and that sort of thing too. And so knowing those aspects of construction of a house really kind of aids you in thinking, okay, if this is missing, then a rodent can get through because this is missing.
Oh yeah. I mean, rodents can fit through so many different places. I mean, if you've got, you know, they can dig underground, and if that foundation, you know, it goes underground. So if there's a break in that cinder block, or if it's, you know, a 1900 style house, then maybe it's a real brick house. But that's another thing that a lot of people get confused about, is that a brick house is not a brick house. It's a brick veneer. You've still got, you know, wood behind that house, or behind that structure. You've got a gap right there. So as soon as that rat, mouse can get into that spot, you know, it's a runway for them. I mean, they can go to the attic, to the crawl space, wherever they need to go.
It really is. So, you know, case in point, one of the houses that I was working on this past week, I'll just show you a picture for an example.
Yeah.
A talking point. So obviously this is right around the edge of the front door, and you see that door frame piece, and then you know, where the brick meets. I mean, there's just nothing but gaps. And
it looks like somebody tried to mortar a little bit right there on their own.
Yeah, and so basically there's all kinds of gaps all the way around the door frame. You can literally just see right into the void spaces behind the brick veneer. You know, these are things that we try to work on sealing up. So afterwards, it might look something like that.
Very nice.
You know, where we go and we put in some close cell foam backer rod or backer foam, and then we go and we seal those gaps up. You know, another interesting point too, people don't think about it, is entries for your dryer. So that same exact house, you know, they had a rodent issue where they were seeing mice. And this is what I found when I went and looked at the dryer vent. It was non-existent. It wasn't there. And lo and behold, as I suspected, when I got into the house, I looked at the dryer hose and it had a big hole in it. You know, and I've had other houses where this was a problem, where there was so much rat activity and evidence of just feces from underneath and behind the dryer, from where the vent was just completely gone. And had the vent been there, the vent cover been there, then there wouldn't be a problem. And then afterwards, this is what we had. So
I love how you put that flapper vent on there because that vent is going to close. We see a lot of the metal one, the smaller, thin metal one that has that little flapper, and over time, it gets clogged up, or that little mechanism just doesn't work anymore. So I do like those.
People don't, people, and I, myself included, I'm guilty, but people don't always clean out their lint from that hose, and so they think, okay, well, I clean the lint trap on the dryer, and I'm good. But there is lint buildup on there too, and like you said, those old metal ones, the flapper inside just stays wide open, and then also they're more susceptible to damage. They stick out further, so people can dent them and bend them, and then they won't close because they're bent. So that was kind of the finished product, and you can see I had to chip away at the brick around the pipe just to get the vent cover to fit flush with the wall. As you can see, all the mortar and dust and brick down on the bottom where I had to drill away at it. But so I don't think that they're going to have any issues from mice getting in through that. And then another spot,
if they do, you'll know because you'll be able to tell that they tore it off. So
exactly. And then another spot with that same house that we had issues with was around the ventilation on the side of the house. So as you can see, this side of the house where some of that line runs up inside the louvers of the ventilation, that line is actually an HVAC line. But it was just wide open, and rodents can climb brick or any kind of textured surface very, very, very easily. They don't have a problem climbing up there, and getting into things they're not supposed to up in the attic. And so we also sealed that up as well. So
well, and I'll say too about a gable vent. A lot of people say, well, it's sealed on the inside. It is sealed on the inside, but the builder, well, that's true. You are correct. So if it's sealed on the inside, it is a very, very thin, not even wire. I mean, it's a screen. It's basically like your back deck screen. So a rat, a mouse, can chew right through that. Bats can get through that. It is not a layer of protection. So I know you're about to show the gable vent finished. So
well, and that was the case too with that one, was that there were the tears in the screen. I mean, the screen was just a wide open access point too. So I had a picture of the finished product of that one, but I don't know where it went. So, but I do have another picture of a finished product of one I did the other day. So as you can see, we took hardware cloth, we covered all of the louvers on the outside, and there's not going to be anything that gets through that at all.
No, not at all. And I mean, it would be very hard pressed to be able to get through that. So, and I will say, just a safety, if you're thinking about doing this yourself, completely fine. Check for wasp nests before you get up there.
Being 20 foot up in the air, 30 foot up in the air, and having to try to swat at wasps is probably not the ideal thing, if I had to say so myself. But
I've been stung. I've been stung several times.
Another issue that I find too on a lot of older houses is just plain and simple wood rot. So, for example, something like this on the house, people may think because it's underneath an eave that a rodent may have trouble getting into that. But I have seen squirrels and rats contort and bend in really, really strange ways to get where they want to go.
Oh yeah.
And that right there is definitely a rodent access point. So we did seal that one up for the customer as well. Obviously the best thing's going to be for them to replace the wood and all that, but that's a little bit more than what we cover in just a simple exclusion job. But as you can see, we took and we covered it up so that there's going to be no other rodent access point up into the attic through that entry point.
Right. And I will say too, it is the customer's preference. We can use white, we can use black, we can use the silver. So the customer does have an option. Obviously, there's different points to all that. So it is the what the customer wants. So, and that's exactly what you did, Travis.
Yeah. So the other thing too that people may neglect as far as rodent entry points is crawl space vents. And depending upon the age of the house, your crawl space may actually have a legitimate, real made metal vent with, wire protecting the louvers on it. But in the case of some of your older houses, like one that I was dealing with this week, is you may actually have some that actually do not have vents. So when the house was done, the ventilation for it was actually formed out of the brickwork on the bottom side. So if you take a look right here at this video and see what I'm talking about here. So you see the brick was actually just left open between spots so that air could flow through the crawl space.
Yeah, those
Go ahead.
those holes right there. I mean, I know we're talking about rats and mice, but a possum could fit in there. A potential raccoon could get in there if it was small enough. I mean, just not good for anything. You definitely want to keep all those vents covered up.
Exactly. So it's a very tedious process because the only crawl space ventilation on this house is literally that, and it's all the way around the base of the house. So there's a whole lot of gaps and cracks and things like that to have to seal up. So, but this has got to show you the difference between one that's been closed up and one that hasn't. So we took that 1/4-inch hardware cloth and molded it. It's a lengthy process, but it looks great, and it does the job by sealing out those rodents. And so each one is different, as you know. I mean, someone who's laying brick is not going to make sure the mortar is exactly right, and so you literally have to bend and shape each piece to the hole itself. So it's a very time-consuming process, but you get a aesthetically pleasing look, and you get the job done by ensuring that a rat or a mouse or whatever can't get up under the crawl space.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. I mean, the customer being happy, it looks clean. If somebody's walking by, it just doesn't look like somebody shoved a bunch of bricks in a hole like we see a lot, or
I see that all the time. There's still gaps.
A pine cone. I've seen some very interesting things just kind of put into place, thinking that a rodent wouldn't get through it.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, crawl space doors. People kind of just either A, they don't have one, B, they leave it open. There's gaps around them. So this same house where I just showed the pictures of the mesh going into the crawl space vents has a crawl space door, and all the way around the frame of the door is gaps. So what I had to do was go and put backer rod in there and come in and actually seal it up with some concrete. So, I mean, you can see, of course, that's before. Those gaps weren't big enough for a rat, but they were definitely big enough for a mouse to get through on multiple sides and areas of that door. So, anyway, so I sealed those up for the customer too. But a lot of people, don't realize that an open crawl space door, worse than mice and rats, I mean, you're going to end up with a raccoon or something up under there, and that's something that's dangerous and nasty and, has health issues for you and your family. It's just something you don't want up underneath your house. No,
definitely not. You want it as dry and as clean of animal and animal feces as possible.
Exactly. Well, like I said, those are kind of the big things that I dealt with, and I've got a little bit more video footage in terms of showing that gable vent like we were talking about. So I have some before and after video that I can show too. So this is kind of the before footage, and you can see I'm up on a ladder on the side of the house, but where those power lines go in right there for the house, there's literally a huge gap, and the customer had at some point not only had problems with mice and rats, but they also had problems with squirrels getting in.
Oh yeah, we see that all the time. I mean, like I said, squirrels go up high. Rats, they tend to go up high. So getting on the roof and getting through something like that is no problem for them. And then, a couple months goes by, you start hearing a noise, and they've already been in there, making nest and causing a lot of problems. So. Yeah, and so I've already showed the photo of it, but I did take a video of kind of the after of what it looked like when I got done, so you can kind of see. But we cut it to fit, and we screwed it up there so that there's nothing else that's going to be able to get through that. And one thing I'll say about the covering up the gable vents, it's not easy. It takes a lot of time consuming. It takes a lot of practice to get it that just clean. Well, and if you're not good with math and angles and tape measures, and you may be there a while for sure. And add the frustration of teetering on the top of a ladder to do it, and it's definitely a challenge. Oh yeah, and the bigger ones that you have to cut it in half. You have to do a half triangle and then another and match it up. And like I said, it does take some experience. That it does. Anyway, so that was kind of my trials and tribulations for the week, if you will. So
several gable vents sealed up, crawl space vents sealed up, dryer vents missing that had to be replaced. Sometimes when you go to do an exclusion job, you just end up feeling like a jack of all trades. It's like you're a carpenter, you're a metal worker, like you feel like you might be a plumber or something at some point. I mean, it's really a mixed bag because there's so many different things that can go wrong with your house that can lead to you having a rodent problem.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the amount of material we use. I mean, we use mortar, we use wire mesh, we use screws. I mean, we've got, I don't even know how many drills, how many hammer drills we've gone through.
Sawzalls, hand shears.
Sawzalls, yep.
Yeah, I mean, you literally never really quite know what you're going to get into when you go to do your inspection at the first time. So you really kind of do have to end up being a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I'll say one funny story. I was at a customer's house and we were explaining, the process of what we needed to do to get these rats out, and she just said, "I'm gonna do it myself." And so I walked her through the process, and she goes, "Well, what do I need?" And I said, "Well, you need a hammer drill, you need wire mesh, you need screws, you need this, you need that." And she was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna let you do it." So,
well, in the case of the house that I was working on, I'll give you the picture of this house again. The customer and her husband, really nice folks, they decided that they wanted to do the interior trapping on their own. And that was, so we talked about it. I explained to them some good methods, and I don't mind telling them, hey, where would I put the trap if it was me doing it?
Of course not.
Thing.
Yeah.
I don't mind giving the customer all the tools that they need to do the job. So they chose that they want to do the trapping on their own. And, I'm going to try my best to set them up to be successful with that. And like I said, just give them the information, based upon my observation of their house and what I would do. And like I said, my biggest goal is to always make sure that the customer is satisfied and to make sure that the customer is able to have their problem taken care of, whether it's us doing it or whether it's them doing it.
Of course. And I'll say one thing too, on the jobs that we do, the success rate of sealing that up, and if you seal every hole out of that entire property, we have had literally where we've gone back that next week and they've had rats for a year, and then a week later they had no activity.
Well, and you can't underestimate the value of a very good, detailed, thorough inspection. So, for example, I had one house that I went to. The customer and her husband were complaining about rats, and they knew it was rats because they saw one or two at multiple points run through their living room in the middle of the daytime. Large rats. The rats had chewed through their drain lines underneath their dishwasher, flooded their cabinets in their kitchen, so they were very frustrated. We were the third company that they had called out to do this inspection. And I'll say within about 15 minutes of me looking around, walking around, asking the customer questions, where did you see this rodent run when it ran through the room and all that, was able to determine that the culprit, the whole reason they had a rat problem, was, like I showed you earlier, this right here.
Yep.
That was the side. That's exactly, and this is not their house, but that's exactly what the side of their house looked like. They didn't have a dryer vent. So when I pulled back the dryer, there was rat feces everywhere, and the rats had literally chewed a giant hole through the dryer hose and were coming in and out. So, of course, we got them fixed up. I had to run to the hardware store and get her a new dryer vent and cover and everything else. And when I came back, the entire house smelled like Clorox because she had bleached everything. But at the end of it all, she never, ever saw another single rat in her house. And she was mystified because you're our third company that we called, and within 15 minutes, you found what no other company found.
Well, and that's, we see that a lot. I mean, putting a bait box out, putting traps out is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't cover up that access area where those rodents, any wild animal is getting into, you're not going to stop the problem. Something else.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, if you kill those rats, eventually other rats are gonna come in and start making a home as well. So.
Yeah, and like I said, it's frustrating to me sometimes because, I feel like any company out there's goal should be, taking care of the customer's problem so that the problem doesn't exist anymore. And there are those companies out there that their idea of rodent work is to go drop a couple of exterior weighted bait boxes around the outside of the building, put bait in it, and say, okay, you're good, and hope for the best. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't cut it. I'd say 99% of the time that does not cut it.
Well, it's not, we're in the business of solving the problem for forever. And our warranty shows that. I mean, we give a 1-year warranty up to a lifetime warranty. So it just depends on what the customer wants and all that. It's also transferable. So if someone sells the home, it goes right with it. So something to think about there. I mean, like I said, just setting traps is fine. You can catch the rats, but you can't stop them from coming in.
Yep. I always tell everybody that I go to do a rodent inspection on is that the 100% end-all be-all, the only way to truly solve your problems is to seal the rodents out from your house completely. All right, so again, if you have any rodent problems or issues, or if you just have a question, please feel free to call me. My name is Travis McGowan. I manage the Montgomery location of Pesky's Pest Control. Call today. Our number is 334-595-9055. You can ask for me, Travis, and I will be more than happy to speak with you. I'll come out, I'll give you an inspection of your house, and we'll see if we can't get your rodent problems taken care of.
Google Pesky's Pest Control Montgomery. Number